Stop blaming the Republicans. The real threat to democracy isn't the 77 million Americans that voted for the tangerine twat waffle. It's the 112 million Americans who didn't bother to vote at all. The Krispy Kreme nation that sits on the couch every football game and screams at it as if they're some type of expert. You know, the political geniuses who scream at the screen because they don't like what's going on, but yet are too scared or dim to exercise their constitutional rights to vote because they're somehow afraid that exercise means getting off the couch and physically doing something. Here's some math you're not going to like. In the last presidential race, 264 million Americans had the ability to vote, yet 75 million Americans voted for Harris, 77 million Americans voted for the tangerine twat waffle, and a staggering 112 million Americans treated the democracy of voting like a gym membership and said, nah, I'm good. Everybody's hating on the 77 million Americans that voted for the tangerine twat waffle, yet the real number that really devastated the election was the 112 million Americans who couldn't even be bothered stopping the house from being lit on fire. And before you get triggered, just realize you can't be mad at the results if you couldn't even be bothered showing up and casting your vote. Here's another truth you're not going to like. The 112 million Americans that stayed silent had more power than all of the loudmouth trolls that are going to plague my comments. A brutal truth is that the president wasn't elected by the voters. He was voted by the people who didn't vote at all. Let's really be honest. People didn't stay away from voting because they're lazy. They stayed away because they're drowning. They're drowning in debt. They're drowning in work. They don't have childcare. They don't have a vehicle. The way and means to vote in this country is so difficult that people simply don't have the time because they're working 2 to 3 jobs to survive. 112 million Americans not voting is based on the fact that the system is broken, that these people feel that their voice doesn't matter, or that their vote isn't going to hold any weight to the American people. And they are wrong. Brutal truth that most don't want to realize. 112 million Americans that didn't vote is still a vote. And a vote that most politicians are banking on. Because while you stay silent, they can continue to do things that don't represent you and only represent the 30% of Americans that actually did vote, that are being politically pushed or being manipulated. And silence is hurting all of us. Do you realize if you don't vote, someone else is going to vote for you? Someone else is going to vote and decide what your future is or what your children's future is going to be. Here's my challenge. If you don't like the economy, if you don't like what's happening to this country, if you don't like the tangerine twat waffle in the Oval Circus, then you need to make your voice heard. You need to vote. You need to protest. You need to come out from your shell, off your couch, and you need to stand up with everybody else, because now is the time. Not later, not what maybe, not should do it, not could do it, but now stand up and make your voice heard. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think.